Welcome to Football Never Sleeps, presented by Academy Sports and Outdoors. We're an aspiring to be viral, adequately caffeinated, properly sponsored weekly YouTube show all about Notre Dame football and a fan base that can't wait to talk about Style Points. I'm Eric Hansen in South Bend, and letting you know that Style Points in my house qualifies as not having a stain on this shirt. He's Tyler James in LaPorte, Indiana, and maybe practicing his kicking and seeing if he has any eligibility left. Together, we are the word salad avoiding content creators at blueandgold.com. On tonight's show, speaking of kickers, there's a kicking crisis at Notre Dame. How are they going to handle it? There's also a schematic curveball from Navy coming Saturday night to Notre Dame Stadium. And there are college football projections coming up and reveals. We'll talk about those, recruiting, and your questions, so start filling up the portal. This is
Football Never Sleeps.
All right. Well, with the way you kicked off that show, maybe you should try out for kicker, Eric. I don't know.
I'll give it a try.
As Eric mentioned, Football Never Sleeps is presented by Academy Sports and Outdoors. The most festive gear of the year is back at Academy Sports and Outdoors. Don't miss the limited edition Magellan Outdoor Christmas Market Collection only at Academy. Get exclusive 2025 gear and gifts for all your holiday parties, fun family photos, and Christmas morning traditions. Check out the entire collection from matching PJs and holiday print fishing shirts and dresses to exclusive new Mossy Oak Snowdrift camo styles and more. Shop in store or at academy.com. Need it fast? Get same-day delivery powered by DoorDash. Let your holiday fun begin with the Magellan Outdoors Christmas Market Collection only at Academy. Thank you to everyone tuning in live with us on their Monday night. Shout out to Scott, Jeff, Outbound, Eric, Ron. Even though we have usernames rather than your typical names, I'm not sure why YouTube made that switch, but I know it. I can connect the dots with enough of you, especially with your avatar, so I know who all you are. So we appreciate you guys chiming in the chat as always, and we appreciate everyone watching this on replay as well. No matter if you're watching us on replay or live, make sure that you subscribe to the channel, hit like on this video, send us some comments. You should also consider a subscription to blueandgold.com. New users can sign up for the first week of an annual subscription for just $1. Head over to blueandgold.com. Hit the Join Now button at the top of the page, and then you can take advantage of the new subscriber deal. All right, Eric, we'll start today, like we always do, with Marcus Freeman's comments from his Monday press conference. He spoke to us to review the Boston College game and start looking ahead at Saturday's game against Navy. What were your biggest takeaways from Freeman's press conference?
Well, my biggest takeaway from what you just said is that I could order matching pajamas and have them delivered by DoorDash. I never knew that I lived in that kind of world. So that's pretty exciting. And the press conference today, I thought was exciting from the standpoint, I thought there was a lot of information. I thought that Marcus Freeman really gave us some good answers where he could have word saladed some of the subject matter. So for me, the biggest takeaways were the discussion about the kickers, and not just who's it going to be, but how they go about fixing things on the mental side of that, using the sports psychology. Thought that was really interesting. Secondarily, when I asked about Cooper Flanagan, and again, you look and you see left Achilles, and very little of what's happening with him at this point has to do with the actual Achilles healing. It's getting over the mental hurdles. I thought that was interesting. And I loved his answer. I know Pete Byrne didn't love his answer from WSBT because it didn't make a great soundbite, but I loved his answer, the way that he's approaching the college football playoff reveal tomorrow night and how he addresses that with his team. How about you? What'd you like from today's? What'd you get the most out of?
Yeah, I wonder if there is a world where there is a ranking that would draw Marcus Freeman's ire enough to use it as bulletin board material, but he shut down any suggestion of that, and probably with the first college football ranking, that would make sense to not be too concerned about it from his perspective, using it as motivation for his team. I was most interested in Notre Dame's plan to try to stop this Navy offense and the importance of experience and playing with velocity against Navy. I thought it was kind of funny when Tim O'Malley asked Marcus Freeman about like why did you have success as a first-year coordinator at Notre Dame in stopping Navy? Because Marcus Freeman has had better success in that 2021 game than many of the recent defensive coordinators at Notre Dame, and he chuckled. He's like, "Well, you didn't look back at my 2017 game against Navy when I was the defensive coordinator at Cincinnati." So in 2021, Navy was limited to 166 rushing yards, 18 passing yards, and just 6 points when Freeman was Notre Dame's defensive coordinator. But when he played against Navy or coached against Navy for the first time as a defensive coordinator, Navy rushed for 569 yards and a 42-32 win over Cincinnati. At that point, it was the second most rushing yards in a single game for Navy in its program history. So he said they just kept running the ball, and we couldn't stop it. It's a rough feeling. So I thought that was interesting perspective that he was sharing, and obviously notable that this will be Chris Ash's first time as Notre Dame's defensive coordinator going up against Navy. He did coach against Navy as the co-defensive coordinator at Ohio State in 2014.
In the opener.
That Navy team rushed for 370 yards with 5.87 yards per carry, but it only attempted 4 passes with Keenan Reynolds. And as we'll talk a little bit later, the Navy offense includes a bit more passing than it did back then. So it looks a little bit different than probably a lot different than what it did back when Chris Ash coached against it back then. I wanted to dive a little bit more into Notre Dame's kicking conundrum because I think that's the thing that is maybe the most perplexing right now for Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman said a lot about the kicking situation today in terms of what they're trying to do. I'm not sure that he provided any clear answers about the best path forward for them. I'm not sure that he knows yet. Like I think they got to figure that out this week. Did he say anything today that influences your opinion on what you think Notre Dame should end up doing?
A little bit. It sounds like they have a good handle on their plan. Now, whether that plays out on Saturday night is a different story, but I thought, he gave a real comprehensive plan about how they deal with the mental side of this. And I thought that was really interesting. In terms of whether it should be Noah Burnett, whether it should be Eric Schmidt, it led me to believe why I would pick one over the other. But I don't know which one of those two are struggling more with the mental side of it. So for me, what was incomplete was it sounded like he implied that Noah Burnett was completely healthy. That was kind of reading between the lines for me, but I don't know that to be true. And it's been so intermittent with him. I think those two things just kind of blend together. With Eric Schmidt, we know he's healthy. So my thought is you need to have 2 guys ready. And I do think that they both need to play in this game. And I think Eric Schmidt they both probably need to play. I mean, maybe you definitively see what you have in this game, but I would be looking at that maybe in the Syracuse and the Stanford games as well. We're going to have Mitch Jeter, last year's kicker, who also went through a injury stretch, on our Third and Gold podcast on Thursday. So you want to check us out on YouTube or your podcast channels, because I think we'll get some great insight from that. But for me, what's clear is you can't just zero in on one guy. You need to have 2 people ready, I think. What do you think? What did you come away from that?
It's funny because I think the complete opposite. I think you have to stick with someone and let them go through their struggles. I think that's how these guys can get some confidence back, whoever they pick. If you give Noah Burnett one kick and he misses and you put Eric Schmidt out there, I don't know how Noah Burnett is ever going to get back to where he needs to be if that continues to be the plan.
Yeah, and I want you to keep going because I like your idea, but my suggestion wasn't if Burnett misses, then put Schmidt in. if they both make all their field goals, give them both chances.
Sure.
Just give them the experience.
Yeah.
But I like where you're going with it, so keep going.
Yeah. So like, I just think that I would imagine that feeling like you're being backed up by the coaching staff, like, okay, it's okay, you missed, go out there and fix it. Like, we know what you need to do to fix it. You know what you need to do to fix it. Let's just keep at it. The thing that I just don't know, like you alluded to, is like, how is Noah Burnett's health influencing his kicking? And maybe it's not even physical. Maybe it is mental. Maybe he is now mentally thinking too much about what he needed to do to get back to where he is now, and how that maybe has changed his swing in terms of what Notre Dame has tried to get him to do to avoid those injury issues from recurring. And maybe that is a mental hurdle that he has not quite cleared yet. So yeah, I mean, my preference would, and I don't know that this is the right answer. I just think I see the chances of it working out in the long run being better if, you know what, just let Noah Burnett figure this out, because he's been through ups and downs before as a kicker, or let Eric Schmidt learn as a college kicker for the first time how to handle the ups and downs of a season. I know that's risky. I don't think there's any plan that isn't risky with the way things have gone, right? Like, I don't know that, like, if Notre Dame needs to make a field goal at the end of the game to win the game, I don't know that anyone can have a lot of confidence that Notre Dame is going to make it right now. And Notre Dame needs to avoid being in that situation as best as possible. Obviously, Mitch Jeter was able to come through despite his struggles last season and his difficulties with his health, and had a big kick against Penn State. I don't know if either of these guys will be able to get to that point this season.
Yeah, I'm really eager to talk to Mitch. I mean, in just watching these kicker struggles over the years in different cycles, the thing is, there's not a one size fits all answer. For example, Marty Biaggi talked a couple weeks ago about how difficult it is for freshman kickers to make the leap from high school senior to freshman. And Justin Yoon defies that. Justin Yoon probably came out of the womb making field goals. But Jonathan Dorr came in and struggled for a good couple of years. I mean, it was a disaster, and it was all above the eyebrows. And then all of a sudden he got a handle on that and became one of Notre Dame's most accurate kickers from that point on in his career. So, obviously when you're looking for your next great high school kicker, and you think that Eric Schmidt is the number one kicker in the country, you think he has that makeup eventually. Where I like Eric Schmidt is, if you needed a 54-yarder to win a playoff game or to tie a playoff game and send it into overtime, he's the guy that has the leg to kick it. Whether he has above the eyebrows, I'm not sure, but he has the leg to kick that. And that's why I would want to get him ready, just in case you even needed him as a situational guy, just for long kickers. That way, Noah Burnett's not losing his confidence and saying, you know what, I've never kicked a 54-yarder. This kid kicked a 55 or 56 in high school. And when we've seen him in practice, there's nothing wrong with the length in his kicks, but it's just whether it goes through the uprights, which is the problem now. So it's a very interesting thing. And again, I can't wait to get a chance to talk to Mitch Jeter on Thursday in our Third and Goal podcast.
I wanted to tap into your history of covering Notre Dame football, and see, like, what does this compare to? Obviously, there's a comparison to last season with Mitch Jeter, right? But what other kicking situations have been worse than this? What's been the worst kicking situation that you've covered in this career of yours?
I'm not sure of all the years here, but I can give you an approximate place in Notre Dame history when these two things happened. One was they were having some issues in the Charlie Weiss era, and Charlie felt like he was desperate. And this was when you had unlimited roster, so you could go out and get somebody in the middle of the season. And he plucked David Ruffer off the Interhall teams, and he David Ruffer maybe kicked a field goal or an extra point that year at the end of the year. But the next year when Nick Tausch got the yips, they went to David Ruffer. And David Ruffer, I think, set a school record for most consecutive field goals. This is a guy that came off the Interhall team. Can you imagine? But there have been less successful experiments like that. I can remember in the Bob Davie era where they were having a very similar problem with this. And this is in the era when Notre Dame usually didn't invest a scholarship in a kicker. They were just trying to get some kid to pay $50,000 for school and kick field goals. And they had several kickers, and they finally, Jim Coletto was the offensive coordinator. He said, hey, look, there's a guy on the soccer team, but he meant as a position player that he had scouted, not as a kicker. Bob Davie was all excited thinking Shane Walton was going to be the next kicking solution, and it turned out he was an All-America cornerback. And so their kicking woes persisted. They even talked about Jenny Grubb, who kicked at Vaughn McClure's high school. She was their high school kicker, and she was on the women's soccer team. And she said she would have loved to have been asked to come out, but she wasn't asked to come out, so she didn't come and help the team. But, I know that was kind of in the era when Jim Sanson was the main kicker. And there have been other stretches where there's either been injuries or ineffectiveness. But again, you are now investing scholarships in kickers, and you're investing in going and getting proven kickers out of the portal. And so you're expecting, somebody that can go kick in the NFL someday to be on your roster when you're doing that, or at least somebody that's going to be pretty reliable with the kicks you should make. And so those are the ones that stand out to me. There was, early in my career, there was a guy at IU, I think his last name was Stojakovic, Pete Stojakovic or Stojanovic. It was a name similar to that, but he was a very good soccer player, and IU was a big power in soccer then. I think they still are, but they were a national, title contender every year. And he played soccer and football simultaneously. He would sometimes have to get in a helicopter and go to the football games. Now, he was outstanding. That wasn't a crisis. That was a solution. But those are the ones that I can remember. Do any jump out at you in the time that you covered that I might have missed?
I was nothing stood out to me by memory. I had to go back and look at some stats. And the one that was poor that I didn't remember was Kyle Brinza in 2014. He was 14 of 24. So that's like 58%. And that was his last year.
Do you remember what part of that was? It was the holder.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that they had to switch holders, remember?
Because he was like a record-setting kicker for Notre Dame in his previous 2 seasons, and he dropped all the way down to 58% in his final season at Notre Dame. But now that you mentioned that, so that would
remember we go, who's the backup holder? Because we didn't know who to put in. It was like the Arizona State game out in Tempe, where it was started to be a problem, and it persisted. And finally, they went to Malik Zaire, and Malik wasn't, technically perfect with that. I mean, he put the ball over different places, but the one thing was he was a cool customer and he caught the ball. I mean, he had really good hands. His placement wasn't perfect, but he wasn't going to fumble around with it. He wasn't nervous about it. So that was what was kind of amusing with Malik. When we get him on the podcast, we'll have to ask him about his holding career.
Today, I consider that one of the things on my list of possible questions was, is everything going well with snaps and holds? Like, are there any issues there? And I didn't ask that because there were enough kicking questions as is, I felt. And he didn't mention that in any of them. It never once came up. So that leads me to believe that's not an issue. Now, maybe he's protecting those guys too, but that's not the sense that I have. I haven't noticed anything. The only reason I would ask just because the situation has been so dire, and just sort of searching for answers. But I assuming that is all in line, that at least gives Notre Dame a confidence that they don't have to worry about that. Obviously, Buckner dropped the snap in that on the extra point against Texas A&M, but that hasn't been a recurring issue.
They need to keep Lucy from peanuts away from the football.
Let's run through as quick as we can the injuries, and then we'll hop into some of the questions. So keep those questions coming. We appreciate it. As expected, Notre Dame still has 4 players ruled out for Saturday's game. Offensive lineman Billy Strouth, Charles Jagasa, and Peter Jones, and defensive tackle Gabriel Rubio. 5 players are listed as questionable. We're still awaiting the returns of wide receivers Jaden Greathouse and Micah Gilbert. Cooper Flanagan is questionable, as you mentioned, after missing the Boston College game. Do you think there's any reason to be concerned there?
About Cooper Flanagan's injury?
Yes.
Again, having talked to Eli Reardon about it this summer and then talking to Marcus Freeman today, I mean, it's a mental hurdle. A lot of times with these really severe leg injuries, you have a little bit of pain and you're like, oh, does this mean I'm going to injure this again? And you think about that, their tight end room and how many catastrophic injuries they've had that he's been, and you can see where it creeps in. But I remember Eli telling me this summer, he said that was a constant problem for him for a long time. And finally, he just said, you know what? I just have to go out there and play like I don't care if it happens again. I've got an identity to my life. If football isn't for me, if I have another injury, I'm going to be able to live with this and be, what I want to be outside of football. And that's when he finally had peace with it. But I mean, we've talked to women's basketball players who've had ACL injuries. We've talked to football players, and there can be a real mental hurdle in getting back from those long rehabs.
All right. Cornerback Christian Gray is questionable after missing the Boston College game with a left hip injury. Do you think there's any sense in Notre Dame maybe just holding him out regardless, given the opponent this weekend?
I looked at his Pro Football Focus grades from the 2 triple option or semi-triple option teams last year in Navy and Army. He had a very low grade against Navy and played a lot of snaps. He played less against Army and had a pretty good game. Where he got docked on his score was the coverage. He had real trouble with Navy's change-up passes in that game. And so if Mark Zachary or Dallas Golden or one of those guys, or even Chance Tucker has a better feel for that, then I would go ahead and play those guys and let Christian Gray heal and be ready for Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh, Syracuse, and Stanford all throw the ball all over the place. They're pass first team, so I'd get them ready for that.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. Lastly, offensive tackle Styles Prescott, who's dealing with a left shoulder injury, is questionable as Notre Dame's backup left tackle. He missed the Boston College game, so I asked Marcus Freeman about the remaining options at tackle. He was hopeful that Prescott would be back this week, so that's a good sign. But as we've seen, Notre Dame is open to moving Gerby Lambert to offensive tackle if needed. So if there was an injury at offensive tackle, that may be what Notre Dame does. And then Mehdi Augustine, the freshman, was mentioned next. He's played in 2 games. Marcus Freeman noted that they want to redshirt him, so the ideal wouldn't be to have to play him the rest of the season, or in all the games for the rest of the season. And then he mentioned Will Black, so I just wanted to mention that because I know we get questions about backup offensive linemen, and that's something I'm always curious about. So when Prescott was ruled out of the game the other day, I thought, what's next for Notre Dame out there? Because last week he was asked about the interior, and Chris Tarrick was the guy he pointed to as sort of next up in line.
From what I understand, had Mehdi Augustine not had the concussion ahead of the USC game, he had made enough progress where they feel confident enough to put him in the game, and I think they probably do at this point. I think Black, even though he can play tackle, it would be more preparation to get him ready to play tackle in a game. I think guard they'd feel good about beyond Chris Tarrick, but as far as a tackle, Mehdi Augustine is coming on. They like him.
I don't know if you saw this in the chat. David Petchak, which I've probably butchered his name, helped you out. Pete Stoyanovich, I think, is probably who you're talking about.
Yeah, that was.
So that was cool to see that. Let's hop into some of the questions we have here. Brian Habermill said, I thought Boston College played a unique defensive structure with cover one with a low robber defender. Notre Dame hit some deep passes and a long run. Do you think more teams will try that approach?
I think Navy will, because Navy's not good at pass defense anyways. They are a much better run defense than Boston College is, and better than they are in the passing game. The problem is they're coming off a game in which North Texas shredded them with the pass. And so they've got to think, okay, Boston College had some success with this, and yet we got shredded by the Mean Green, who threw the ball all over the place against them. But I do think that they will look at that Boston College game, and there will be some things they take from that. And that's probably maybe what they'll start out doing if CJ Carr burns them too badly. Because, again, they're not a team that can catch up easily. And so, if you get 2 scores ahead of them, even though they're more of a modified triple option than the old 3 yards and a cloud of dust, I still think it's hard for them to catch up from 2 scores down.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think more teams will try to do something similar versus what USC was doing with sitting back with 2 high safeties a lot. That game plan didn't make a lot of sense to me. I think whether or not Navy does it, Pittsburgh, I think, will be another team that's going to challenge Notre Dame with tight coverage and make your receivers and your quarterback beat you there. So that doesn't mean that Notre Dame's running backs can't make impacts. Like, obviously we saw the huge touchdown run for Jeremiah Love, which I think it's important to mention that those plays can become easier. Like, there's a chance, like, once he breaks into the secondary, like, there's not going to be other guys that have angles on him because of the so many guys in the box. I think there were 8 players in the box when that run play was snapped. So the right cut and a couple good blocks, and you could really hurt that kind of defense with a good run too.
USC had 6 in the box sometimes. They really had a light box.
Outbound says, do you guys think that maybe Notre Dame was prepping a bit more for Navy than Boston College during the bye, with it being Ash's first time calling a game against Navy?
Marcus Freeman did say they did some Navy prep during the bye week. I don't know how much it was Navy and how much of it was Boston College, but that's pretty typical of Notre Dame. Even when Navy's not coming right up, they tend to do some prep. They usually do some during training camp, and they also do some during their bye weeks. Maybe they didn't with the Texas A&M bye week because it was so early in the season. But in this is pretty typical for them to do their October bye week and do some Navy prep.
All right. Jeff Stevens asked, what exactly is the injury to Burnham?
I'm not sure, Tyler. Do you know?
I'm not sure either. I was trying to see if I could find something.
Last year it was an ankle. He had an ankle injury in the Northern Illinois game, and he kind of played through it for most of the year. There seems like there's been shoulder issues before with him. But I'll tell you what, when I was watching the game Saturday, I saw 40 a lot. I noticed him a lot, and not just when he had the fake face mask call against him.
Yeah, I don't know that for sure what he's been dealing with. I'm not.
He's never been on the injured list, so we haven't seen that.
So I'm not exactly sure what he's been dealing with and to what extent, or if it's multiple things. It could be different things too, for all we know. Maybe a few minor things that add up. But certainly, if Notre Dame can get that kind of play out of him moving forward, that would be a great help to Notre Dame's defense. Mike DeVoy says the running game was disappointing, but the backs didn't have many holes to run through. Was this because Boston College was sending almost everyone to stop the run, or we're missing our 2 best offensive linemen and the replacements had 1 start between them?
Well, I think it's a big difference when Billy Schrouth isn't in there. And yet, if Billy Schrouth had played, Boston College was throwing a lot of resources at the run. That was their strategy. It was just the opposite of what USC did, and it was pretty successful. So I think it was a combination of those two things.
Yeah, I think so too. Like this offensive line is going to continue to need time to work together and get on the same page with each other. But yeah, the challenges aren't going to be probably that different as we move forward. They're going to have to be challenged by numbers in the box and figuring out how to get bodies on bodies there, as Marcus likes to say, in terms of figuring out how to handle their assignments.
And Navy has one of the best interior defensive linemen in the country in Landon Robinson. He is. I voted for him for first team All-American midseason on the AP team.
Yeah, and I included him on the whatever stage we're in for the Lombardi Trophy. Semifinalists, I think. I had to vote for 12 semifinalists, and I included him on that. Does Navy have a strength on defense? Speaking of Landon Robinson, I expect Carr to throw better against them versus BC. I think the wide receivers are that much better athletes than Navy. If Navy crowds the line, Carr will make them regret it.
Navy is a much better run defense than pass defense. I think they're 40th in rush defense, and they're around 100th or 110th. Let me look. They are 102nd in pass efficiency defense. So they defend the run better. And they see, I mean, that's a good number for them considering they've played Air Force already, and Air Force primarily a running team. But this is not a vintage Navy defense. When Navy has been a top 25 team, they've had a really good defense to pair with what they do offensively. I think they're in a really difficult stretch with North Texas, and then Notre Dame comes up. And I think I know they at least have South Florida, and they may have Memphis too, or somebody of that caliber still left on their schedule, and Army. So they've got some toughies left.
This must be what it feels like to have a sideline reporter, because Mike Singer said he'll look into it, guys, in terms of the Joshua Burnham injury. So we'll let you know if Mike comes back with some answers for us. We appreciate that, Mike.
Absolutely.
If
he had said he was going to look into the kickers, I would have really been shocked.
Indy in Georgia says Pitt is looking like they might be a handful, particularly after coming off the Navy game. Not sure I like the noon start. I know there was a question there, but I wanted to point out that the Arkansas game was a noon start, and Notre Dame handled that just fine. Now, obviously, I think Pittsburgh is a better team than Arkansas, but the noon start concern, I'm not sure that I would buy into that personally.
Yeah, I mean, I've been kind of beating the drum on Pitt as the possible trap game, and they've gotten better. They're better than when I first made that prediction. It was more based on the sequencing of the post-Navy hangover. The good news is Navy's a little bit more like everybody else now in that they're a good throwing team, not an often throwing team, but a very good throwing team. They're in the top 10 in pass efficiency. But Pitt has gotten better in some ways. They have a lot of confidence with that freshman quarterback, Mason Heinschel, enough to have Heinschel for Heisman hoodies. And maybe he'll even change his name to Heisman at some point.
Or hoodie.
Or hoodie, yeah. Their offense is a little bit more diverse with him. He's got better foot speed than Eli Holstein. They don't do a good job of protecting either of them. They give up a lot of sacks, but it feels like their running game has come along a little bit better. They are a little bit more balanced, and defensively, they've been improving. They are number 6 in the country in rush defense. They do take a lot of chances with their blitzing, and they also take some chances in not having deep safety sometimes in their passing game, but it's working for them. They've won, I think 5 in a row. They were, I think 2-2 at one point. They lost to West Virginia and Louisville in back-to-back games, and then they installed Heinschel as the starter, and they've been rocking it. So they have a very difficult ending to their season. They play Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, and Miami. But if they were to just win the 2 ACC teams, they would probably get into the ACC championship game.
All right. Speaking of quarterbacks, do you think CJ Carr will eclipse 3,000 passing yards in the regular season?
I don't know where he is right at this point.
I can tell you. Yeah, I looked it up because I saw the question. 2,057 yards.
And we are 2/3 of the way through the season.
Yes, he's got 4 games left.
And he's playing 3 really bad overall defenses and 1 team that's not very good against the pass. So I will say yes. Because I do think a lot of these teams will say, CJ Carr beat us. We're going to try to stop the run. So I think the opportunity's there.
Yeah, I think that pushes me towards yes too. There could be scenarios where I think what we expected against Boston College is that maybe they wouldn't need him to play the whole game, so maybe his yardage it isn't aided by a number of pass attempts because he's not playing full games. But Notre Dame's got to go out and blow out some teams before we can count on that. So I'll go over as well, over that 3,000 yards, and that would be a nice number for CJ Carr to hit as his first-time starter. Mike DeVoy said, I was impressed by Malachi Fields catching up to Jeremiah Love on the long run to provide a block if needed at the end. I knew he was fast, but that was amazing. Why don't we see more deep throws to him?
Well, I think I can answer what that was like early in the season. I think early in the season, Mike Denbrock did want CJ to throw more balls, maybe 50-50 balls to Malachi Fields. And CJ was trying not to throw interceptions and trying to take care of the ball like he has also coached. So there was a little bit of a conflict. I think he's more confident in those throws now as he's gotten a better command of the offense. And again, CJ is coached not to, okay, we're going to throw it to Malachi in this play. It's, I get up to the line of scrimmage, and if there's the best mismatch is Will Pauling on a fade to the end zone, that's where I'm going to throw it. It's not, well, and it may originally be to Malachi Fields, and then they get up to the line of scrimmage and he changes the play to the best possible play. And you have all these running backs, you have this tight end that's having career numbers for him. But I still think on top of all that, I would ask that same question. If you were hosting the show, Mike, I would ask you the same question. So we'll ask Tyler since he's smarter than both of us.
Well, I'm not smarter, but I do have some numbers.
Okay.
According to Pro Football Focus, Malachi Fields has been targeted 16 times at 20-plus yards downfield. He's only caught 5 of them. So that's a 31.3% catch rate. Whether or not those are on Carr or Fields, I would need to go back and watch all of them. But the 5 catches alone have resulted in 179 yards and 2 touchdowns. So when they do hit, they tend to hit big. 16 targets through 8 games, that's only 2 a game. Maybe you want more there. I think there are other options that you could do that with. It doesn't have to just be Fields. Jordan Faison can do that. He has been targeted 7 times beyond 20 yards. Will Pauling has been targeted, more than that, 11 times beyond 20 yards. So Notre Dame is stretching the field some. Certainly maybe not to the extent.
Eli's had some deep passes. I don't know how many, but it just seems like he's had some.
Wow. Yeah, I just pulled it up. He has had 7, and he's caught all 7. He's been targeted 7 times at 20 yards down the field or more. He's caught all 7 of them. So they've been extremely. He has a 99.9 receiving grade on those instances. I don't know how you would do better than 7 of 7. So I know at least the one was the coverage break against Miami. That probably helped him on that too. But he has been pretty consistent for Notre Dame in being able to haul in some of those deeper throws. So yeah, I think Notre Dame's gonna, as long as the conditions permit, right? That's the trouble of playing into November in the Midwest or the Northeast, that you're going to face maybe some bad weather here in November, and we'll see if that plays a role at all. But yeah, I think Notre Dame's going to continue to try to stretch the field, whether it's with Malachi Fields or someone else. Scott Fegan says, does Carr have his best game of the year against Navy, or does Notre Dame get a more balanced attack? Would like to see Love and Price break out again.
I don't think that they're going to have enough possessions where he's going to set his career high in passing yards. Navy's going to try to shorten the game like Boston College did. And so he may have a really high percentage, but I don't think he's going to have, let's say, 400 yards or something like that. Although, no, I just don't think that there's a scenario that's going to lead to that. But I think he can play really well and have a great pass efficiency number.
Yeah, I think I'm impressed when it's like a tight game and you're asked to make these throws in clutch moments. So I don't know that I expect that to be this kind of game. Now, maybe statistically he has his best game of the season.
Marcus is hoping it's not that type of game either.
Yeah, and I bet the kickers are too.
Yeah.
We'll see how that plays out. But yeah, I mean, I think CJ Carr should have have an opportunity to have a pretty good game, and that should be the setup for most of these games as Notre Dame finishes up the regular season. All right, we have some college football playoff questions, and I'll get to those when we talk a little bit more about the playoff. So if you have some playoff questions and we haven't talked about them yet, that is why. Wanted to first touch on both the Boston College game and then looking ahead at Navy. Eric, outside of the kicking situation, are there any concerns from Saturday's game at Boston College that you think shouldn't be ignored?
The short yardage situations and the failed fourth down situations continue to be a problem. I was talking to our old sports editor today, Bill Belensky, and we were talking about it. And, you have a fumble inside the 5-yard line. You turn the ball over on downs in plus territory, and that's 14 points off the board, or at least 12 if you don't make the kicks. But I mean, that's a lot of points that you're giving away and keeping the other team in the game, keeping them mentally and emotionally feeling like they can pull the upset. I thought those were two things that were problematic for me on offense. On defense, the amount of penalties that happened when BC was either getting off the field or would have had a 3rd and forever or 4th and forever, and then it became a first down situation. So like the Kingston Viliamu Asa, I don't know, instead of the throat slash, it's the mustache slash. And then Jalen Sneed shoving the player out of bounds. And even some of the little ticky-tack things like the defensive delay of game were troubling. Marcus was asked about lack of discipline and that kind of stuff, but whatever it is, you got to cut that stuff out because that's going to come bite you in a really good game. It's all fixable. I mean, that's the good part of it. But Boston College, in part in that drive, was able to extend it to an 11-minute possession in part because of those penalties, and really shorten the game and give them a chance, to pull the upset. And I thought that was disconcerting. And also, I mean, you're playing a team in Navy that likes to keep away with the ball. Boston College isn't known for that. So I thought
Right.
that was a problem.
Yeah, the 3rd and 4th down defense was part of that too, like giving up 8 conversions on 3rd downs on 18 attempts, and I think it was 2 of 4 on 4th down. That needs to be fixed going into a Navy game against a team that's probably going to have short yardage situations in those downs as well. The red zone fumbles for Jadarian Price, like that's a lingering concern. And then maybe not as much a concern, but just something to monitor now that we've seen Devontae Smith get back out there and healthy and play a lot. He wasn't the most effective in coverage. According to PFF, he gave up 3 catches on his 3 targets thrown his way for 49 yards, and he had a missed tackle. So I would give him some grace in terms of him being his first game back and having dealt with the injuries this season. But I think it's worth monitoring his effectiveness moving forward and how Notre Dame manages playing maybe both him and Dallas Golden in some sort of rotation down the stretch.
See, and I almost wonder, is he even going to play against Navy? Would they ever need a nickel on the field? Wouldn't you, between your three linebackers,
You
or
think you
even
probably have a
having
better linebacker?
Yeah, or even having three safeties instead of a nickel, having Talich play instead of, because usually they modify the defense somehow. I've seen like one year in 2010, in fact, after Navy trashed Notre Dame with their triple option, Lou Holtz helped Brian Kelly come up with a game plan for Army that year. And they had a cornerback, Robert Blanton, play in the box. And that was very interesting and very effective.
All right. Yeah. Speaking of Navy's challenges, what do you think makes Navy so difficult to stop in terms of what they're doing offensively this year?
I think one of the things that they're able to do really well is offensively is with this particular offensive coordinator is they can go week to week and really vary what their plays look like out of different formations and so forth. So when you look at tape, there's not a lot of help in terms of real instant recognition with what they're trying to do. And so as a coordinator, you have to be a very good in-game adjuster. And Al Golden was that. I think Chris Ash has shown to be much better at that as the years gone on. But you're gonna have to deal with some surprises. You're gonna have to deal with some stuff that you haven't seen before. I think that's what's difficult. Blake Horvath, I think, also is an amazing quarterback. If Navy were ranked and undefeated going into this game, you would hear him in the peripheral Heisman talk again. I just think he's that good. He's a really good passer, and they're just very good at disguising when they're going to throw. And I think that makes it really difficult. And it was difficult last year. Notre Dame was fortunate in that they were able to turn Navy over and get them in a hole in that game. But that offense is difficult to deal with. Again, if they had a very good defense to go with that, this would be a really interesting game.
Yeah, I wanted to offer some stats that I got from Sports Info Solutions in terms of just representing how
did they have a solution?
They didn't offer any solutions. They offered me data.
Okay.
In terms of like shotgun situations, like you don't think of the shotgun when you think of Navy, but Navy has rushed 207 times out of a shotgun formation of some kind this season. That's more than the rushes they've had under center. That's 100. They've rushed 177 times for 910 yards. They've rushed for 1,600 yards and 9 touchdowns out of a shotgun formation. So this isn't your older brother's Navy team. Yeah, they look a bit different, even though they still run the ball a lot. It's coming at you in different ways, but they do throw it too. They've had 95 dropbacks out of a shotgun formation compared to 37 dropbacks from under center. They have 820 passing yards on 81 pass attempts from shotgun and 352 yards on 34 pass attempts from under center. So not what you think about a lot. And I think that maybe that's why Blake Hebert is Notre Dame's scout team quarterback this week. What did you think of Marcus Freeman saying that was the way that Notre Dame is handling things?
I thought it made two statements to me. One is, this isn't your older brother's Navy team. This isn't pure triple option. The second statement it made to me is that, and you've scouted Blake Hebert's high school film a lot more, but Blake Hebert fashions himself as a Riley Leonard act-alike. And in talking to some people at the Goog, his biggest challenge is recognition of defenses and things like that. He can throw the ball a mile. He can run really well, and he's a very physical runner and a fast runner. But the fact that he's athletic enough to give Notre Dame a good look at Notre Dame or Navy's offense, I think says something about Blake Hebert's athletic ability, because you have Tyler Buckner available, and they raved about him last year in prepping them for Navy and Army.
Yeah, he has wheels. He can move. There's a number of long runs that he has on his senior highlight film. If you go to Huddle and look for that, he sort of gets the ball from a shotgun, and whether it's a design or a quick decision, he takes off and he can split the defense pretty quickly. So I think it makes sense that you could do that. And yeah, obviously you have confidence in his ability to throw in situations too. That's the hardest part Marcus Freeman talked about in terms of like the experience. Like you can do as much as you want in terms of trying to be as quick at doing the option looks that Navy is doing, but Navy is going to be quicker at it than you are just because it's second nature to them. It's what they spend all their time doing. So there's a big learning curve there in terms of what Blake Hebert's being asked to do. But with a lot of it being out of shotgun and stuff like that, that probably is a little bit more comfortable to something he's used to. We talked about being a first-time coordinator against Navy. Do you think it being Chris Ash's first attempt at Notre Dame against Navy matters this Saturday?
Not as much from this standpoint that you have Marcus Freeman, who's familiar with it, and you have your whole defensive staff who's faced that offensive coordinator last year around to throw ideas. I mean, if Chris Ash had brought a whole new staff in, I'd feel a little bit differently maybe. And then also his 2014 experience, that was on a national championship Ohio State team. And that was a big number that Navy rushed for, but they are typically the number one rushing team in the country, and they are this year. You know what's funny about Navy? When I was looking at their statistical profile, usually they are one of the least penalized teams in the country. They're kind of in the middle this year. They're bad boys.
All right, well, we'll see if Notre Dame can get them to commit some penalties on Saturday. Let's transition into talking about the college football playoff rankings. Before we get into some of the questions, Notre Dame is ranked at number 10 in this week's AP poll. You ranked them 8, I believe that's correct. Where do you think Notre Dame will be ranked in this first college football playoff release, which will come out Tuesday night?
I'm guessing at the lowest 11. I think they'll be 10th. I'm trying to think of how the committee might see the teams just behind them. They have the 2 SEC teams in Texas and Oklahoma behind them. Virginia and Louisville are lurking behind them as well. I couldn't see a case where you would put one of those teams in front of them. I doubt that the committee's going to say Notre Dame's better than the 2 Big 12 teams, even though I think they are. That's why I have Notre Dame ahead of those 2, Texas Tech and BYU. So I think 10, that would, if I had to place a bet, and you know me, how boring I get with gambling. I don't have that gambling DNA, but if I had to bet, that would be where I would place my money. And I don't have money either. So those are 2 things. 2 strikes.
Come on. I know you miss our place your bets videos. I know you miss them. Eric Swope said, what factors do you believe the playoff committee will be looking for in assessing Notre Dame's chances to make it into the field of 12? Did the Boston College game hurt them?
I don't know that the Boston College game hurts them. With the new strength of schedule metric, they would have to lose to Boston College, I think. And also one of the teams you're comparing them with is Louisville, and Louisville beat Boston College actually by less than Notre Dame did with the same quarterback playing, Grayson James. They're a better team with Grayson James. What I think are going to be really interesting factors with Notre Dame is with that new strength of schedule metric, there is such a thing as a good loss, finally. I mean, they acknowledge and they're going to reward good losses. They want teams to continue to schedule difficult teams outside their conference. And so the loss to A&M is going to help Notre Dame. I don't know how much the loss to Miami will, with Miami losing again, but the A&M loss will help them. The other thing I think is going to be really interesting is, what does the committee think of USC? Because if USC is maybe higher than they are in the AP poll, that will help Notre Dame, at least this week. If they're lower, if they don't think much of USC, then that could hurt Notre Dame because that's their best win. But I will say this, when comparing against the Big 12 teams, they played essentially 48 to 50 non-conference games the Big 12 has. 16 of them collectively. They played 50. They have 0 top 25 wins. Notre Dame has 1 against a team currently in the top 25. The Big 12 has 0. And that's why they're hard to evaluate. They played 3 and they've lost all 3 of them. So how do you evaluate that conference when they're playing each other? That for me is what's difficult. They may be much better than we think they are, but it's hard to tell.
Do you think there's importance in where Notre Dame is in this first ranking? Is there any weight to where you are in the first ranking and how and what that forecast moving forward?
What the committee says is they start from scratch every week, but I think there's probably in the back of their mind they're thinking about that. And I think if Notre Dame is the highest ranked 2-loss team, that's a good sign, because that means Oklahoma or Texas are your biggest threats as a 2-loss team. Those teams would have to have some monumental upsets to jump Notre Dame. Texas has Georgia and Texas A&M left. They would have to beat both of them to jump Notre Dame. I mean, they may beat Georgia, then jump them, and then lose to A&M and jump back. And then Oklahoma has Alabama coming up, and I don't think it's a cakewalk beyond Alabama, but they have a game against Alabama coming up. If they beat Alabama, they would jump Notre Dame, and Alabama might not drop below Notre Dame. I think those are the 2 that I'd be most concerned about. If Louisville or Virginia were ahead of them, especially Virginia, it would be head scratching to me that Virginia, who doesn't have a top 25 win other than Louisville, but has lost to NC State. And there's a comparison there. I just don't see how you could put Virginia ahead of Notre Dame, but I wouldn't worry about that. I think the ACC will work itself out. It's more if there's 3 Big 12 teams maybe, or multiple Big 12 teams, and that whole SEC scenario. There's always a weird team that the committee likes. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's like NC State. A lot of times it's Iowa, and I'm scratching my head. I'm like, yeah, I'd vote for their defense, but not their offense. So,
Mike Singer said, I understand ranking Notre Dame over Miami, but what if the shoe was on the other foot? If you were a Miami fan, would you be okay being ranked below ND? It's interesting.
I mean, I don't look through it from a lens of a fan standpoint, but I think every fan thinks that their team is getting screwed. I've been an AP voter long enough where you don't like my team. And it's not about liking or disliking. But for me, once you get past 1-loss teams, when you have 2 losses or more, the head-to-head really loses a lot of its steam. It needs context. When did you lose to that team? How much did you lose to that team by? Were there injuries involved? Were there interesting circumstances involved? In Miami, I mean, the committee stresses teams that are getting better as the year goes on, and Miami is going the exact opposite way. I mean, Andy Staples is the one national writer who thinks Miami should be ahead of Notre Dame until they lose a 3rd game. I don't think that that's how you play the game. I think the whole season matters. You can't throw out the other games. Otherwise, my point is there are 6 teams ahead of Miami in the ACC standings. Shouldn't all 6 of those teams be ahead of Miami? They have fewer losses in their conference. Why aren't they ranked ahead of Miami? So that's what I would say to the Miami fans. And Mike lives close to Miami fans, so he can explain it to them for me, and I won't have to deal with them.
Yeah, I think I understand the Andy Staples view. I think part of the problem is it's not a problem, but part of the exercise is you're doing this on a weekly basis. If you like, I would rather make that call between Miami and Notre Dame at the end of the regular season than make it now, right? Like when you have all of the data to know, like, okay, yes, if they lost the same amount of games and Miami beat it head-to-head, but what happened throughout the rest of the season that differentiates the two teams. Like that the resume is long. We're getting late in the season, so I think there is enough stuff there to validate your position and many other positions that Notre Dame is ahead of Miami.
They're 8 spots different in the AP poll. It's not like it's close.
Right, yeah, and it's not like it's you as a biased Notre Dame reporter being the one that's doing it. It seems pretty consistent across the board that everyone believes that Notre Dame is a better team right now.
Where I see like head-to-head really mattering, and it finally did in this poll, was USC and Michigan. USC beat them pretty recently and beat them badly. I mean, that was a one-sided game. USC owned Michigan, and Michigan hasn't done other things on its resume that would warrant them being ahead of USC. They play in the same conference. Yeah. What is pulling that Michigan resume up? That they lost to Oklahoma? Okay, goody. USC lost to Notre Dame.
Yeah, I wonder how much of it too is just like with Miami. It's like, well, we've seen this before. They're going to fall off here, so I'm going to get ahead of that and drop them lower in terms of not believing in them.
You still have it with Virginia and Louisville. Virginia beat Louisville, but Louisville beat Miami, and Virginia lost to NC State. So and that's 2 1-loss teams. Even in that instance, I have Louisville ranked higher than Virginia. I think Louisville's the better team. Their resume, and it wasn't like it was a blowout. It was a very close game that they lost to Virginia. So until Virginia beats somebody, which they won't until the ACC championship, I think Virginia's going to lose to Duke. I'm making that prediction right now. Mike Singer.
All right. Book it. We're running into overtime here, and I don't want to take all of your energy from tomorrow night's show with Mike Singer, but We Are Not Marshall asked, of the current projected playoff bracket, assuming Notre Dame makes it, which team is a matchup nightmare for Notre Dame?
I would have to study it a little bit more. Just the eye test, Ohio State would be. I think Indiana is a much better team than they were last year when those two matched up. Indiana is really good on both sides of the ball. I would have to look at that a little bit closer. Their path right now, if the playoff were tomorrow, they would play Ole Miss on the road first. I don't think that's a nightmare matchup for Notre Dame. They play Indiana on a neutral field. That's a pretty tough game. They play A&M in the semis, and then they would play Ohio State. I think Ohio State would be the most difficult team in that path. But I will study that for next week once we see where Notre Dame is.
Yeah, I did, without having studied that, I would just defer to who I think is the best team, and I think that's Ohio State right now. So that's why I would agree with you there.
Last year it wasn't necessarily who the best team was. I thought last year Ohio State, Tennessee, and Oregon were the 3 teams Notre Dame didn't want to see in the bracket, and they were all on the other side of it. I thought those were the worst matchups.
All right, we're going to wrap up here. Just a quick plug. Kyle Kelly had a story with Penn State commit Matt Sig. He's become a late target for Notre Dame in the 2026 class. They're trying to flip him from Penn State. Head over to blueandgold.com if you want to know more about Notre Dame's recruiting efforts there. He's a safety, a 4-star safety in the Rivals industry ratings as the number 19 safety and number 191 overall from Fort Cherry High School. And there's also an interesting story done by some of our national analysts. Cody Belair was talking about Ian Premer, Notre Dame tight end commit, and him making a push to maybe be the number 1 tight end in the 2026 class. Currently, Mark Bowman of Modern Day, who's committed to USC, is the number 1 tight end, but Premer has impressed him this season with 26 total touchdowns so far in his senior season. So some stuff to wet your recruiting whistle if you want to over at blueandgold.com. We will have plenty more coverage of recruiting and football this week. We appreciate everyone tuning into us here Monday night. Football Never Sleeps. Check out more content over on the Blue and Gold channel throughout the week. We'll have the Third and Gold podcast on Thursday, and we'll be here late Saturday it'll be early Sunday with our post-game takeaways after the Navy game.
Just wake up and have coffee with us.
Everyone, have a good weekend, or have a good week. That's not the weekend yet.